narrative. Young, dumb American, arrogant, throwing fits, ripping shit, tearing it, imperative. Then I'm killing this mic no matter where I live. These derelict rappers acting a fool, this embarrassing, this flagrant. That's the nature of this entertainment, and we can't even change it. Guilty before arraignment, now the system tainted. But when we speak, they all laugh at us. And y'all wonder why I'm lacking trust. Try to fight a giant with attorneys that can back them up. That's church versus science, both sides start acting up. I'm late on my assignment, hopping up a mile high, climbing, obviously never silent. New alignment, I'm defiant, cannot describe it. Used to describe it as a young graffiti artist. Before the beard, I always got carded. At every bar, even though my bar's been the hardest. The scars on my face, and I ain't always been the smartest. But I'll show you where my heart is. I said I'll show you where my heart is. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will ever see. I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. I can show you where my...
The type of guy that would ride with the breeze. I'm higher than most people. I'm cold and icicle freeze. I'm liking to Mike Tyson. I'm a bison, a beast. I'm hot like Jamaica, like right by the beach. My pops is from a spot where they're fighting for peace. 8 years old out there watching people fight in the streets. All these sirens only make the violence increase. Yeah, we're still not loving police. It's that bright young American, nice, dumb, arrogant, tight on a mic, but he might need a therapist. Heart full of kerosene, head full of fairy tales. Said that you're my homie, you don't know me, but I know you very well. Roll back on some West Coast shit. This whole track is wetter than your dress code kiss. About to hit the track, running on some retro fit. Against so lit, I guess so, bitch, now let's go.
I can show you where my heart's at. See it on my sleeve. Even if the beat stops, my soul will not leave. If I never stood tall, nobody will...
Let that breathe for a minute. Can't get enough of that. Ladies and gentlemen, Tuesday, hanging with the fellas, sports nonsense and whiskey in the building.
Let's get it.
Notice someone's missing. Our boy Pinky down in San Ann at the Alamo, living his best life for a week. He'll be back later. So it's a Robert and Caleb night. We're going to have some fun with it. My guy, how you doing this evening? Cheers.
Bro, cheers. I am doing amazing. Multiple things are going on in my life right now that I'm just amped for. So,
well, like that.
Yeah, it's been great. Excited for a lot of things that are going on. Acolyte, of course, which we're gonna get into a little bit later. Which is I'm wearing this shirt for a purpose.
All right.
So, got that, some game stuff, video game stuff that I'm all geeked out about right now. So, this life is good right now, man. It's good.
I like that. As Pinky says, we're going to nerd out a little bit tonight.
Yes.
Pinky, I don't understand it either because he's just as big a nerd as both of us, and he acts like he's not. But we're gonna run through some sports to start. We got some NHL, NBA, and Euros. If you're not familiar with Euros, that's because Pinky doesn't allow us to talk about soccer, really.
But we are now.
But we are tonight. And we are going to for basically the next month because big tournament happening. And Robert and I kind of, enjoy the sport of football, soccer.
Yes,
so
as it is truly named.
We're going to discuss this a little bit. Now, I know enough to get myself in a lot of trouble and not enough to feel fully confident in what we're going to talk about. So we're going to lean a little bit on Robert tonight to educate because my last 2 years of living on this earth have been a little wild. And I've had to, let's say, compartmentalize my sports intake due to time restraints. And unfortunately, Euros and Champions League and everything that has gone down recently and coming up, I have not been up on as much as, let's say, I normally would. So, Robert, gonna be leaning on you heavy tonight, sir.
I got you.
And then NBA, NHL, Euros, and then we're gonna, geek out the second half of the show. Discuss some things in the nerd fandom world, if you will, from like you said, Star Wars to. We gotta discuss a little Dune because I finally saw Dune 2. We'll discuss it without spoilers because I know it's still fairly new. Give some.
It's been out since March. I feel we can.
Is it really since March? It has been since March, hasn't it?
So we can. We can dabble in it now that we're
we're
good.
Spoiling it up now.
We're good.
You're right. It has been since March. My life forced me to wait until it came out onto the streaming services. Totally forgot.
Understood. No, all good. And I know a good portion of our viewers have seen it now too, because I've watched it with Andy. So everyone's all caught up. So we're good to go.
All right. So we'll talk that, Star Wars. You know, we'll see where the road takes us tonight, and we'll just kind of wind down it a little bit.
I love it.
With that being said, Pinky not being here, there is not going to be any NFL talk this evening, other than I will mention one thing off the top that I think does carry some significant, for lack of a better way of explaining it, consequences throughout the league. And that's Jay Jetta, Mr. Justin Jefferson, signing the richest contract in history for a wide receiver, making $35 million a year, has now become the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. Wide receiver will now be the highest paid position behind quarterback in the league, with the contracts that have been coming out recently with Amon-Ra and Jalen Waddle and Jay Jetta. And then there's obviously some other big names that need to sign, one of the biggest being CeeDee Lamb. But that's not where I want to go with this real quick. Where I want to go with this is I don't believe it's as significant for the top dogs, because they're always going to get top of the market. They're always going to be jumping each other's contracts. And that's kind of the way free agency and the salary cap work. Where I think this is a bigger deal is for that second tier, the 1As or the 2s. And who I'm thinking about specifically, Devontae Adams obviously has already gotten paid. Jalen Waddle has already gotten paid. Now we're looking at, seriously, where do the Ayuks, the Higgins, and those guys, who many consider on the lower tier of the ones, top tier of the 2s, right in that, kind of sweet spot between the two, what happens with their contracts and how do they get paid going forward? Because they're big-time players, but maybe not necessarily considered top options. So I'm interested to see where those contracts fall, because Waddle and Devontae Smith got paid almost like ones. Obviously, they've got guys on their team in Hill and A.J. Brown that are a little bit above them in the pay scale, but both of them are still in the top 10 of wide receiver pays. So you start talking about Higgins and Ayuk, I think that starts making the conversation really interesting on anyone that would want to acquire them if they were thinking about trading for them, knowing now what that long-term deal is going to look like. Or if the teams finally want to keep them somehow in the Bengals and the 49ers, how do you match that up to the rest of the contracts you already have that are going to explode your salary cap? So that's my football. I don't think there's a whole lot else to discuss, but with Jay Jetta getting paid, figured we'd throw that out there.
No, and I know I didn't get too much into the contract details, but I know I was reading some of the headlines. The floodgates have really opened now, and it's going to become very interesting with how the market's going to be going forward. It's going to set a very unique expectation, I think, and it's going to inflate a lot of egos.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Now, everybody out there, remember, keep this in mind. The salary cap is imaginary, and you can manipulate the shit out of that thing. So anybody sitting here talking about, well, the salary cap, no. If your team wants to go all in, they definitely can. The Rams proved that, and they were down for a year. I think it's worth it. Just saying. I think it's worth it. So we'll keep an eye on that as the off season moves forward. I mean, we're about a month away from training camps kicking off, a little over a month. So there'll still be some movement before the season starts. There's still some free agents out there on both sides of the ball that could help a contender. So things will happen. Pinky will come back and he'll find a reason to talk about football. So don't worry. We'll still do that. Just, we got an opportunity tonight to do a little something different. That's all.
Exactly. We need a little break every once in a while. It's fine.
Yes. Now, moving on to the next sport topic of conversation. There's a big final coming up in hockey. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Lord Stanley Cup is being played for. The two teams are finally set. Yeah. We've got Edmonton and we've got
Florida Panthers.
So there has never been a final that is distance-wise this far apart from the two host cities.
2,540 miles.
Insane. To the point where the NHL modified their final schedule
They
to
had
take into account the travel. And trying to give guys a little bit of time to rest. So you're talking about a roughly 6-hour plane flight in that ballpark. So it's not going to be easy on the body. And anybody that knows anything about sports and injuries, it's not recommended you fly when you're injured. The lack of oxygen when you get in higher elevations, the pressure and everything that goes into that is not the best atmosphere for recovery. So while you say, yeah, these guys get to sleep on the plane, it's all good. You're right. It's just not the optimum conditions. And with them doing that much travel, it takes away time for them to be with their trainers in the cold tubs, getting treatment and everything else that goes with that. So I think it was smart that the NHL did that. I also think it was lucky that these two teams are the ones playing, because if you had gotten, Dallas, New York, there are some other teams out there as well that could cause issues, because those arenas, once the season is over, there's an end date for the season every year that the NHL, NBA, NFL, everybody gives, so that owners can then take those stadiums and use them for concerts and events and things of that nature. So the fact that it's these two teams, I think, made it a little bit easier on the league, because these aren't necessarily stadiums where Taylor Swift and the Era Tour are going to come through. I know that's not going on in the States right now, but just as an example, that's not something that they'll have to work around. So it worked out well that they were able to move that. I think the biggest storylines for me, and granted, I'm not a diehard hockey guy, but as someone who's, I would say, a little bit more than a casual fan from the outside looking in, I would say the two biggest storylines would be Florida as a whole, as a team, looking to win their first Stanley Cup after getting smoked last year. And then you've got Edmonton, and more specifically Connor McDavid, who a lot of people consider the best player in the game, still on an upward trajectory, doing things that we haven't seen since Wayne Gretzky style, looking to get his first cup and etch his name onto Lord Stanley and be remembered for all of hockey history. So I see those as the two biggest storylines: a team looking for their first title versus a star player trying to break through to that next level. There's greatness on both sides. I'm going to butcher his name right now, and I don't feel like looking it up, so I apologize. But Ravlovsky, probably way off on that. I probably should look it up. Give me a second. But the Florida goalie, insanely talented. You still got Draisaitl rolling with McDavid, along with a couple other dudes that he got to 50 goals. So I think this is going to be an exciting series. I don't think it's something that will just draw on the casual fan, because there are two teams that, if we're being honest, don't draw a lot of media attention. So the ratings as a whole for the Stanley Cup might not look as good as they could, but I think you're going to get a really good series.
I would agree with that. I'm excited because I'm super green. It's been a long time since I've actually watched the Stanley Cup final, so I'm excited to get into it and kind of see where this goes and start picking it up next year.
Solid. I am looking this up. Barkov. So far off. Bravlovsky. That's terrible. Barkov is the goalie, and he is pretty dang good. So, and he's not the only one. Don't get me wrong. It's just, some of the bigger names, if you will. Barkov is the center. Where is the goalie? Why do I not? Bobrovsky. I was close. Bobrovsky. Sergei Bobrovsky. That is the dude I was thinking of. So, let's see how things play out. But I personally think, I know a lot of people think Florida is the better team. But what
I think you said earlier that Panthers will roll.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people have said. I don't see that. I mean, when you have the kind of star power and talent that the Oilers have on the attacking side of the ice, if you will, I think it keeps you in series and can even destroy other teams. A lot of people, if I remember correctly, had Dallas favored over Edmonton, and Edmonton rolled. So I personally am going to go out on a limb and say Oilers in 6. That's what I'm feeling this year. Sorry, Florida. It'd be cool for you to get your first one, but I like McDavid. It's hard not to watch him. That goal he put on the other night when he just skimmed through basically the entire Dallas defense and dragged the puck right past all of them and then just knocked it upper right over the goalie's shoulder. Like you're not supposed to be able to do stuff like that. So let's see what happens. Now moving on to something we can have a true conversation about. Well, at least I can talk truly about. Robert will know bits and pieces. He's still learning. Give him a little leniency.
I'm working on it, everybody.
He's
I'm
learning.
sorry.
He's learning. Don't worry about it. No need to apologize, my guy. No need to apologize. You got massive amounts of knowledge in other areas. You're growing in some areas. We're all doing the same thing. Don't worry about it.
There you go. I like it.
But we're going to talk a little NBA Finals right now. I said at the start of the playoffs, I believe the pecking order was Denver. Well, let me back up. I said when we got to the Western Eastern Conference semis, right before the finals, I had the order as Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, Celtics. And the Celtics were at the bottom of those 4 because Porzingis got injured. And I said that was a huge, huge loss for them for the finals. Said it would be no issue for them getting through the East. They could rest them through the entire Eastern playoffs and they'd be fine, which was obviously true. They had a cakewalk through the Eastern Conference. And anybody saying otherwise, I don't want to hear it. They did. Now, I'm not going to fault them for that. You play what's in front of you and you should beat teams that you should beat regardless of who's on the court, right? But every series Boston played, the other team was missing their primary star. So if you're going to tell me they didn't have a cakewalk when every team they played was missing their primary star, it's going to be hard to listen to your argument. Like, that's where we have to start. Let's just be realistic about the situation. I don't mean Boston's bad. Doesn't mean they're not a title favorite. It just means they had a really easy path to get there, which allowed them to rest, which puts them in a really good spot. Now, Porzingis is back, and by all accounts, healthy. I said if Porzingis plays, Boston automatically jumps to the top of the list and tied with Denver as favorites. Now, Denver lost. Minnesota, then, I had them move to the favorite. I had Minnesota, Dallas, Boston. Again, that was because Porzingis was still out and nobody knew for sure if he would be healthy to play. It's been announced he's healthy. He's playing. Well, guess what? Minnesota lost to Dallas. I said if Porzingis is healthy, they move back to the top. He's healthy. I give them back to the top. They are the favorites in my mind. But Dallas is no slouch. And the way they're playing basketball right now is scary because they're playing defense. Their 2 stars are out of this world in Luka and Kyrie. And if you go to shut down one, the likelihood of you shutting down the other is slim to none. And then they've got
the Luka magic.
Yeah, man. And then they got 2 big dudes in Gafford and Lively. They've got the perimeter guys who can go out there 3 and D-ish, if you will, in Jones and PJ Washington, along with some other pieces. The guys know their roles. They're happy with their roles, and everybody's willing to do what they got to do within those roles to win, which is why Dallas has come a long way. It's also why Pinky has had to eat some crow with Dallas, because he basically said there's no way in hell they're winning in the playoffs, and they've just balled out. There's no other way around it. I mean, Luka's looking like the best player in the league right now. So while I do believe Boston is a favorite, I would be foolish to sit here and tell you Dallas doesn't have a chance. I have been a big Dallas guy is secretly, because I can't necessarily root for him out loud with me being a big Nuggets fan and everybody in the Western Conference, but I have always thought Mark Cuban was the best owner in the league. I'm a big Mark Cuban guy, and I was a huge Dirk guy. Dirk Money Nowitzki, as I've always called him. The dude is a baller. So because of that, I've always had a soft spot for Dallas. My heart is pulling for Dallas. I'm not going to lie. My heart is pulling for Luka and the Mavs. I've also talked about how I think Kyrie has turned a corner and he now has a path to be talked about as one of the best point guards of all time. Where 3-4 months ago, I didn't think that was possible. But I've seen a lot of growth, maturity in both his off-court and on-court personas. I still think there's some things he needs to do as far as leadership, playing better defense. But if he can start doing those things on a consistent basis with what he already does, and they win a championship, that conversation starts changing a little bit in my mind. So I'll eat a little bit of crow on Kyrie. I did not think this was going to work out. I did not think he was going to, for lack of a better way of saying it, change what he was doing. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, right? The organization listened to him, which made him feel more comfortable, which made him more willing, and back and forth. But I'll give him a lot of credit. He's in my mind, turned a corner. The problem here is for Dallas, my head, my basketball eyes, my IQ says Boston is the favorite. And the reason they're the favorite is a couple things. One, they've got 3 dudes, one of which I believe is arguably the best perimeter defender in the league in Drew Holiday, and then the other 2 being Tatum and Brown, who are good to great perimeter defenders. So they have 3 guys that they can throw at Dallas's 2 stars. Then you run out a Derek White, who's just as good defensively and could easily also go at him, but he's a secondary piece. You've also got Horford still on the team, who is a solid vet, and then Porzingis, and that's the starting 5, right? So plus the first guy off the bench. So what you're looking at with Boston is a deep level of talent from the starting to the beginning of the bench, whereas Dallas is a little bit more top heavy, and then it kind of falls off a little bit going to the bench and the rest of the starting 5. And not in a bad way. Like I said, Dallas is playing phenomenal, and everybody's playing their part and okay with it, which that makes the team even more dangerous in my mind. So I believe this series is going to go 7. I also believe that this series is a huge, huge deal for the narrative, the legacy, whatever you want to call it, for Tatum. If he truly wants to be considered a Celtic great and one of the top 5 to 10 players in the league, this finals is something that he needs to play at a level that it guarantees him the finals MVP and shows why everybody has been talking about him in that superstar top of the league light. I don't think it's as big a deal for Luka. I think
He doesn't care.
Not that he cares, but just in his overall legacy and where he's stacked up against the players of yesterday and today. He's a little bit younger than Tatum, so that helps. This is also his first finals appearance in a finals that nobody predicted Dallas to be in. Everybody predicted the Celtics to be in the finals, and a lot of people had them as the favorites to win. So that's why I say this is a big deal for Tatum and not as big a deal for Luka. This is kind of a win-win situation for Luka, and it's a win-lose situation for Tatum. Because if he wins and he plays well, his name gets etched into history. If they lose, even if he plays well, if they lose and he plays poorly, that narrative is going to get real ugly for a little bit, I believe. And I believe it's rightfully so. It's not that he's a bad player. It's just the fact that if we're going to talk about all-time great status, legendary status, you start nitpicking resumes. And that's just the way it is. If you want to be greatness comes with certain standards. And one of those is propelling your team to the ultimate victory. So I'm very excited to see these matchups across the board and how that plays
for this
out.
good basketball. It's gonna be good.
I think this should be an epically good finals based on the way Dallas is playing right now. So
absolutely,
I do think the matchup mismatches go in the Celtics' favor, which is why I have them winning. And I know I got some Boston friends out there who are huge Celtics fans. I got a buddy I grew up with since I was kindergarten. And his family are huge Celtics fans. And I've caught a little bit of heat from him. And I understand why. It's justified. I have not been necessarily high on the Celtics, and I believe I've laid out a pretty good case for why. But I can still understand the fandom being a little frustrated with me, maybe is a good word to say. So let's see how it plays out. Again, head is saying Celtics, heart is saying Dallas, but I will pick Boston in 7. I will pick Boston in 7.
you're going all 7. Okay.
I do. I think it goes 7. I do think Tatum has had his best career year. I've said that before. I think he's kind of, in my mind, started to knock off the inconsistent superstar status because of this year. I need him to finish that off if he wants to truly get out of the doghouse of my superstars, if you will. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how that goes. I'd be lying to you if I said I still think Denver and Boston would have been a better matchup overall. I think Minnesota was strictly built to beat Denver, and Denver blew it. They're up 20. They had their opportunity. They blew it. And then Minnesota went and fell on their face.
No, literally, though.
So, and I truly believe, I think that's because they expended every ounce of energy they had in that Denver series, and they had nothing left when it came to Dallas. I believe that's what happened. Their Super Bowl was beating Denver. They're a young team still, inexperienced in playoffs, and I think people underestimate what it takes to go through that entire grind. If people forget, Denver was battle tested. Now they hadn't necessarily won at the rate people expected them, but they had been in the playoffs and to a Western Conference Finals with this core. So they kind of knew what it took. Minnesota isn't there yet. Now they kind of know, but the West is going to be a gauntlet next year. Denver's not going away. Dallas is still going to be there. Let's see what, OKC can do. Do the Pelicans get – there's a lot of lists on that Western Conference side. I don't think Boston has as hard of a path. Yes, Milwaukee will be better. Yes, Philadelphia should be better. That's about it. I don't see any other teams really jumping to the front of the line to give Boston as much trouble as you would see in the West to go through. So I'm stoked. I'm excited to see what this series looks like. And let's see how the games play out. Boston home court, that's going to be a huge deal.
Definitely. Well, hey, cheers to that. It's going to be a great series.
Cheers, cheers, cheers. The last thing I'll say about the NBA Finals is there has been, I want to say it's 6 years in a row now that we have had a new champion. This would make the 7th, I believe, if my memory is serving me correctly. And that hasn't happened since I believe it was after, I want to say it was in the early 2000s after Detroit. But even that doesn't seem right because you got San Antonio in there. The Lakers are sitting in there. So I can't remember exactly when, but it's been a while since we've had this kind of stretch to where we haven't had a repeat champion. And the way the NBA is set up going forward, with the way they've got the salary cap set up and really forcing people to not be able to grab the 3 stars anymore, it's going to be a lot harder to see those repeat champions. This is set up much more like the NFL now. Now, the NBA doesn't necessarily have a hard cap like the NFL does, But the idea of what they did with the cap was to try and bring that competitive balance back down a little bit more. So the likelihood of us seeing repeat champs going forward is slim to none, I think. Now, San Antonio is considered one of the best dynasties in the history of the game. They never won back-to-back. But they do have 5 in 8 years, or 5 in 10 years, or something like that. I'd have to think about it a little more, but I don't feel like doing that right now. They are a dynasty, but they never had a repeat champion. So by no means am I saying we still can't have dynasties. I just think the likelihood of a repeat champion is going to be as slim as it's ever been in the history of the league. So something else to keep in mind as we go into the finals and then the offseason. Watch what these teams do, not with the stars specifically, but with the way they fill in the pieces around those stars. Denver's going to be right at the top of that list and how they do that to stay competitive and come back. Minnesota's going to be in a position where they're going to have to start paying people. That's going to cause some issues there. Dallas is in a great spot because their young guys and some of the bench guys are not going to require max money. So you can max out Luka and Kyrie, and then you don't have that third star you're looking to pay. You just got to try to keep the other guys happy and with contracts that are going to be willing to keep them around. So just kind of one more thing to keep in mind as you're watching the finals and then going into the offseason after that.
I don't have much to say on that. So
going from, and anybody who likes cricket, I don't want to hear shit from you. Cricket is not the most popular or the second most popular sport in the world. It is only listed there because of populace and because of one country, and that's India. Due to the fact that it is the most populous country in the world, and that is their favorite sport, I would expect there to be a giant popularity for cricket. But I'm tired of hearing this conversation, social media, where people are saying it is the second or first most popular. No, it's not. No, let's knock that off. It's like 5th, 6th, 7th down on the list. And I don't want to hear anything different. Just because one country decides that they're so populous that they can go ahead and say it's popular. No, we're not playing that game. So going from what I believe is the second most popular sport in the world in basketball to the first most popular sport in the world, which would be soccer, football, the Euros are coming up. And they start, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the 14th of this month?
10 days. Yes,
14th
10 days.
to 14. So for those of you that don't know, this is the second biggest soccer tournament in the world, right behind the World Cup. It is called the Euros because it is the European Championship. So only European teams will be competing. So you're not going to see your Brazils, your Argentinas, anybody from Africa. The United States they're not there. Okay. This is strictly European continent teams. It is every 4 years, correct?
Yes, every 4 years. So we're catching up, and it's 6 groups of 4. So that's 24 teams, just to kind of put that into perspective here. Which, again, all of these teams play for 3 games. They're each guaranteed 3.
It's set up exactly like the World Cup when it comes to the format. So just to throw that out there, you've got your round robin group stage, 3 games, basically. So you play everybody in your group. And then you'll move on to is it 16 that they take after the first round?
Yep.
So then you move into your knockout round, 16, 8, 4, 1. So that's where you start getting the format. So as Robert's talking, I just want to make sure everybody if you're familiar with the World Cup, same format, just not as many teams.
Exactly. And it's a very interesting Euro situation. As of right now, as far as an overall, England is favored to win this, which but Harry Kane just seemed to really kind of not come through with Munich at the end. So I'm not sure what England's going to have to do to power through this. There's been a lot of good teams that have been kind of rising up. Belgium's one. Or you know
Yeah,
what? No.
but I mean, look, Belgium had their golden age for the last 8 years,
And
and
now they're in
that
a big
squad
rebuild.
could not
Yeah.
get it done. And they were, not this last World Cup, but in 18, they were the favorites, were they not?
They were.
That golden age for Belgium, they went in as, I believe, the favorites for the World Cup that year, or one of.
Yeah.
And they just they made it to the quarters or semis. I think it was the semis, because didn't they beat America?
Yeah.
They beat the United States, which
Well, the
everybody
United
thought.
States, I don't think we're in the 20 and 18. I don't think
No, you're right. So it's even farther back. So the golden age is even farther back than that. It'd go back to 14 then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was when Brazil was favored because they were at home and Germany took the cake.
Right. But Belgium, they think about it this way, Americans. What America is positioning themselves to be in right now with the group they have and the young talent, America is going into what is considered our golden age. This next World Cup is not the one everybody is truly expecting greatness from. It will be icing on the cake if it happens, or the cherry on top, or whatever you want to think about. 2030 is the World Cup that the world is looking at as America being truly competitive with the young core we have right now. That's where Belgium was 2014, 2018, 2022 was kind of the end of that. Now you're moving past it, I would think.
Exactly. And that's been one thing with Belgium is they're in a rebuild, kind of like where Germany was when they won the World Cup in 14 and came back. So they're very a favorite to watch, but I don't know how favored they are to go into the tournament. And, you know, kind of like how, we do our draft picks and all that, like who's going to win each thing. I do the same thing for the first matches, just kind of figuring out who's doing what. And I'm still of the opinion that Croatia still is a dark horse with Luka Modric. I mean, I still want that man to win something.
Dude,
Like,
I mean,
he
club
gets
ball, he
all
kills
the
in
time.
club ball. Oh,
he
good old
just-
Real rolling through people down there. But yeah, Modric is
he's a beast.
I've always thought of him as a Messi light.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that in a demeaning way to Modric. I'm trying to say that as a compliment, because he does a lot of the similar things, just not at as high a level. But like, let's be honest, Messi is arguably the greatest player to ever play the game. So mentioning him as somebody that you could see similarities in should always be a compliment, right? But just the way Modric controls the midfield and the pace of the game for Croatia has always been something that has just been fascinating to me.
No, completely. And they had so many good chances in these last few World Cups. I mean, I was pulling for them because as much as I hate saying it, Germany just has not been at the top of their game in any way. And I just get overly hyped and get overly disappointed every time. But this year so far, I think they do have a chance to get out of their table. I think that they'll be a bit of a competitor. But no, I really want Croatia to do well and go far. There's really not too many others that I'm excited to see other than maybe Mbappe in France. Just with how everything has been breaking there. Again, to catch people up in off a slight tangent, Kylian Mbappe, who was playing for PSG, was just transferred to Real Madrid, which is one of the, if we're talking dynasty teams, this is the definition of dynasty.
Well, let's take it a step further for people to understand. If you're talking world clubs for any sport, Real's at the top.
Any sport.
Every club, every team, every sport, there is not a club in the world or team that is above Real Madrid, in my mind, right now. What did they just win? Their sixth Champions League?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's absolutely absurd. It is similar to Brady and the Patriots, but the reason I would not put Brady and the Patriots on the same level as Real is because Brady and the Patriots weren't playing the very best to win these championships every year.
So this is their 15th European Cup and their 6th Champions League in the last decade.
That's stupid. That's stupid.
It is so dumb.
That
It
would be like the
pisses me
Patriots
off.
having to play an entire season, because the Champions League is its own season, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that goes on concurrent to the European professional leagues, the Premier League, La Liga,
League players,
Serie A, everything, okay? While those are all going on, these teams then are also playing against other top club teams to say who's the best club team in the world from every division. So it would be like the Patriots having to play a separate season during the football season where they're only playing Kansas City, San Francisco, Buffalo. Like, they're only playing the upper echelon of everybody. I don't think they're winning 6 Super Bowls if that's what they have to play the entire way through to get to the Super Bowl.
Nuts.
So I'm trying to help people relate and understand how insanely impressive it is that Real has 6 in the last 10. It's stupid.
And their squads have all been different.
Right.
All of their squads have been different.
Now, there has been a core there for the most part. Modric,
which Cruz is retiring from.
Cruz retires this year.
Which there's rumor that this is Modric's swan song internationally, so I don't know how that will play out.
But then you also have, and I'm surprised you didn't mention this when you're talking about England being a favorite, the amount of young talent England's throwing out there this year is absurd. And right at the top is Jude Bellingham.
Exactly. And there's been, for those that didn't really keep up with the Premier League and things like that, this came down to the wire. There were so many different scenarios that could have played out that could have extended the season. It was dumb with how the goals needed to be scored and the teams that needed to win. Absolutely insane. And a lot of these players, I mean, are homegrown. So I mean, Saka is another one that I am. I am terrified of to play if Germany and England go up against each other. I'm just terrified. Declan Rice is another one. I mean, what a powerhouse player. Again, most of these guys, a good portion of them came from Arsenal. I know there's a good portion from Newcastle. They are dangerous. And if they are not going to display that dominance throughout this tournament, it will be shown in the World Cup in 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me throw something out there to you. And you, again, like I said, I know enough to get myself in trouble, right? It's always kind of dangerous when you have a little bit of knowledge.
Completely.
But you know the sport, but you haven't kept up. You know what I'm saying? So the feeling I've gotten from the little bit I've been able to keep up with and whatnot and read, this England team, to me, gives me really crazy shades of that late 90s, early 2000s, when you're looking at Beckham in his prime, Rooney coming up, and how dangerous that England squad was. I get very similar feelings from where this England squad is now, moving forward in the world stage.
Yes. It is. It's going to be awesome. And that's one of the great things about watching football is all of the talent that's grown over time. And then you just see these different countries become powerhouses. It's great. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Italy has not been a very strong team in a while.
But they are
they are
champ,
performing better.
Aren't they the reigning champ in Euros right now? Didn't they win the last one?
Let me double check that.
Again, I know enough to get myself in trouble, guys, but I feel like that. I feel like I remember.
So Italy did win the last championship, but that's always one of the curses with football championships is back-to-backs unless you're Real in these situations. And Italy's been having to grow a lot of their team over the last several years. So for them to win back in 20 was great. For them to come back this year, it's going to be a totally different level of play.
Well, let's be honest. The top dogs, in my mind, there's always been 5. when it comes to European football and really the World Cup as a whole, then you can throw in Brazil and Argentina as the other two probably. But you look at England, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. Now, when you look at the last couple of World Cups, Germany has fallen off a little bit, and they've had trouble kind of rebuilding. But it looks like they're starting to get back to where they expect to be. Italy fell off the map there for a minute. Just straight fell off the map. And,
About 10 years.
Yeah, and nobody expected them to win the last Euros. So they kind of
They came out of nowhere.
Yeah. But they're, in my mind, they're still kind of doggy paddling, trying to figure out where they are. I don't feel like they truly have the talent to compete yet. Spain fell off the goddamn map.
Yep.
From where Spain was to where they are now, I mean, I just think about some of that talent they had, and you start at the top with Iniesta, and then you can go down that list of what they had on that team. It was scary. And then you look at Portugal, who I'm still trying to figure out why have they disowned Cristiano Ronaldo? I am still mind blown that the dude that can play at a high as a level as he is still, why you would not want him on the squad. And for whatever reason, him in Portugal have not seen eye to eye. Now, whether that's, the heads of the federation, the coaching, I don't believe from what I've read over the years, it's the players. I feel like a lot of them would still want him on the pitch. I could be wrong, but he is on the squad, if I remember correctly, when they announced.
They're on the squad, and I know there was something because the Saudi Arabia season's different. Right. I can't remember all what happened, so I think that's part of this delay. But at the same point, these are the qualifiers, so a lot could be said if they do it without him. But in previous years, Portugal's made a very blatant statement that they are not standing behind him anymore, and they're moving on.
Doesn't make any. I don't know why you would ostracize, in some people's minds, the greatest football player of all time, to the point where it almost feels like the country has turned on him to an extent and doesn't want him as part of the national team. And I don't get it. I haven't read anything or seen anything other than my feeling is that somebody has personal issues with Ronaldo and tried to blackball him. And the dude is so talented that they haven't been able to fully follow through with it.
Exactly. And with and I used to be a big Ronaldo guy, and I've fallen off when things just started getting really weird with his contracts. And when he was trying to go between Saudi Arabia and these other places, I just kind of got out of it. And personally, I think that he has always had a bit more of an edge than Messi to a degree.
Yeah. For sure.
And I always find it very upsetting that Ronaldo's always just come up that much short in a lot of these tournaments, because I definitely think that he deserves some of this.
I mean, the only big tournament he ever won was the Confederations Cup when he beat America in the finals, if I remember right.
I believe that's correct.
I think that's the only major trophy Portugal's won since he's been there.
Yeah.
They've come close, like you said. You were right. I mean, they were here multiple times. And
in the 14 Cup, they were one of the big favorites.
Absolutely.
That World Cup alone will go down in history for so many different things.
For sure.
But no, for Ronaldo, it's just a matter of time now before I think he's just done suiting up internationally, just because it's just not going to happen. And with the management with where they are positioning him, it's going to be a sour ending to a great relationship.
Definitely seems that way. Let me ask you this kind of side note before we jump back into the Euros, since we're here. If you had to throw a Mount Rushmore of footballers, how off would it be to say Maradona, Pele, Messi, Ronaldo, and Cristiano Ronaldo, not the other Ronaldo? How far off would you feel that is? Because to me, that's the more I think about it, the more that's kind of where it sits.
Well, then you also have to. You're missing one key person there, though, and that's going to be Ronaldinho.
I glad you mentioned because he's on the outside looking in. Now, here's the kicker. I go back and forth between Ronaldo and Ronaldinho because Ronaldinho does have a World Cup. And his career, while not as long as Ronaldo's, you watch them both on the pitch and you can tell they're both as impactful.
Completely. And that's why I personally, for me, I mean, Brazil's kind of been always the home for a lot of the greats of soccer. And while I can appreciate Cristiano Ronaldo, I think a lot of what he was able to do came from seeing Ronaldinho on the ball and being able to adapt to that. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ronaldo has a lot of raw talent, but some of that has to come from where you're seeing play. That's why I say in my position, I would put Ronaldinho on Mount Rushmore over Ronaldo.
Would Ronaldo be sitting at number 5 for you, or would you have somebody else even above
No,
him?
he'd be at 5.
Okay.
I'd definitely put him at 5.
I
Just
can't
'cause
hate that.
He's like you said, an impactful player on the pitch. And overall, he's brought so much to the game that it's part of his legacy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
for me, and I've got plenty of Ronaldinho highlights running through my head with him on the ball. That dude was disgusting with the ball on his foot. I don't know if there's anybody in history, and I know that might sound blasphemous, but I don't know if there's anybody in the history of the game that was as masterful with his touch when the ball was on his foot.
mm-hmm.
It was just wild to see. Messi is right there. Don't get me wrong. Messi is right there. But Ronaldinho did some things in traffic that your jaw dropped and you could
Like,
not
how
figure
did
out
he
for the
get
life.
there?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like watching Messi. Yeah, honestly.
Now, I will say the reason I have Ronaldo slightly above Ronaldinho is because of what Ronaldo was able to do to score off the ball. And there's one image that sticks out in my head every single time. And I can't remember who they were playing, but it was 2 World Cups ago. And he seemingly jumped 6 feet in the air to climb over everybody off a corner or a free kick. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then put the ball in the back of the net off a header.
Oh, you're talking in the World Cup?
Yep. You know which one I'm talking about. Where there's a photo of him where his legs,
his phantom goal,
his thighs are at everybody else's head level. Like, it's an absurd still shot.
Yeah.
And that just lives in my head rent free because to me it shows that he wasn't just dangerous on the ball, he also was dangerous off the ball to score as well. And I don't know if there's anybody in the history of the game that was as good as he was off the ball still scoring.
Yep. I was watching it right now because I was making sure it was that one. Because that was the one from 22 and it was just right on the line.
It was this last World Cup?
I believe so. I'm going to send you the link just to
He's
be sure.
got a few of them over the years, club level and World Cup.
I mean, yeah, overall, I mean, when you see that man jump, it's gravity defying.
It's wild. It's wild how high he can get above everybody else to get those headers and put it in the back of the net and stuff. So that to me is the slight edge I give Ronaldo over Ronaldinho, because I don't remember Ronaldinho doing a whole lot of scoring off the ball.
That's
moving
fair.
In space and getting somebody else to set him up for the one touch. I remember him more on the ball, making a move that breaks everybody's legs and him scoring. And I know that's not always true. I just feel like it's a more often than the other one scenario where I do believe Ronaldo, and I know it's not exact, but I do believe he's more of a 50-50 where he can score on or off the ball better than anybody else in the history of the game.
Completely.
And
his vision's impeccable.
It is. And if we're being honest, Brazil as a whole has more talent than Portugal. So Ronaldo was always fighting an uphill battle when it came to the world stage compared to other
absolutely.
stars.
I mean, even just if Portugal, I mean, what was it? It was in the 14 Cup, Portugal. They tied against the Americans. And I mean, for those that don't quite grasp what that means, the United States almost has no business at times being in the World Cup, which is why they missed a couple years.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, my guy.
I mean,
the talent has always been there on the United States side, in my mind.
It's just never been executed.
And that comes down to coaching and organizational management.
True.
And for whatever reason, the U.S. as a whole at the very top continue to think they can win their way at a game that we are not the best at. And we need to start changing that mindset and realizing there is a way to play this game where you can win at a high level. And I do believe the United States has the talent to do so. We just have to change the mental aspect of the way we go about doing it.
Exactly. And I still, every time the United States goes up in a match, I'm pulling for them because I want to see that go forward, because every time they play, there's more and more to it.
This guy, my cohort over here, dark side force user and a German fan over America. Can you believe this guy? Unbelievable.
What can I say? What can I say? What can I say? You know,
he's drinking beer instead of whiskey. Let's just keep this in mind, okay?
I mean, you gotta get my beer in when I can. I miss my good German beer.
Hey, in all honesty, we all know, drink whatever you want and come hang out with us.
Oh,
I'm gonna give my guy a hard time if I can.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got it here if I need to dabble a little bit. I'm prepared.
We just see Robert slyly pulling rips off the bottle instead of pouring himself a glass.
I mean, I don't actually have a whiskey glass in here like I normally do, but yeah, just always have to be prepared. And I am pulling for Germany. I really think they can do something and get to at least the quarterfinals this year.
So let's run this down then. England is I don't want to say heavy favorite, but they are the favorite going into this, I think, in most people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Germany is second, but they've got a little bit of room between them. Germany's third. Who's
England?
second?
England, France, Germany.
France. Oh my God, that was stupid. Yeah, France, of course, should be second. Favorite to win the World Cup. Won the World Cup. So there are some not the last World Cup. Obviously, they failed to Messi, but they have won a World Cup in recent history.
Yes.
They've got arguably the best player in the world right now, in some people's minds, in Mbappe. So France is up there. I'm going to flat out say I am not pulling for France, and I hope they fall on their face. And it's simply because something that technically has nothing to do with the national team, but it's within the country, and it's PSG. And you and I have talked about this before. The way PSG has run that organization and ran now two of the best players in the world out of town because of fans in the organization. Look, you got to find reasons to root against, right? And so my reason to root against France this year is because of a club team within France that ran their own star out of town because of the way they treated the best player in the world in Messi and running him out of town. So the fact that Mbappe didn't even want to play for the best club in France, and let's be honest, we all know when you're the best club team in the country, you have ties to the national team then. It's just the way it works.
And that's what makes this very interesting with what's going on.
Exactly. So while France might be the second favorite, and rightfully so because of the amount of talent they're going to throw out there on that pitch, I mean, Griezmann's still playing too, and he's barely even getting talked about these days for some reason. That dude's pretty damn good. So they're throwing out talent still. I just, I think about some of their talent. I'm like, I like a lot of their talent, but I'm not pulling for that team. And it's simply because, like I said, PSG turned me off. PSG is in France. They're the top dog. Now I'm going on the national team. Germany third. Who's sitting fourth? is it Spain?
Spain.
Which is crazy to me because, and I've said this already, you know, you talk about the top 5 dogs on the world stage. Those 5 countries are always going to be mentioned within that top 5 in some order somewhere, along with the 2 South American teams. So Spain is the most interesting one to me because they are basically completely removed from their golden age now, and they are all new.
Yes.
So it will be interesting to see how this new crop of talent within Spain can perform on the world stage after, I mean, kind of really falling on their face in the last World Cup and underachieving in a lot of people's minds. What does Spain look like going forward? Can they get back to that we're the best in the world type status and everything has to come through us kind of thing? Or are they going to be struggling a little bit more? And then we already talked about where Italy's at. Portugal,
Italy doesn't even make, Italy's low.
Yeah, absolutely they are right now. Absolutely.
They're actually, it goes, so after Spain, it's Portugal,
Yep.
then the Dutch,
Okay.
then Italy, then Belgium.
Where's our boy Holland sitting? Because Norway isn't just Holland anymore. They got a couple other young talent names coming up that I think personally, I've got them as my dark horse this year.
Let me see.
How far off would I be in thinking that going forward?
Are they even in the tournament?
I thought they were. Am I missing something? I could have sworn they were in it.
I'm double checking. Nope.
Are they not?
Hang on. What?
Here. Let's see if I still have it pulled up.
I'm not seeing them on the roster at all.
They're not.
No, they're not.
They are not. I could have sworn they made it.
I thought they did too.
Oh, snap. See, again, know enough to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, no kidding. I was going to say, I thought they didn't qualify.
I could have sworn Erling Haaland and Norway had made it in.
Mm-mm.
He is Norway, right?
Yeah, no, he's a Norwegian player.
Yeah. Damn. Brutal. I could have sworn they had made it. Well, my bad. We won't be watching that crazy talent. The Dutch are really interesting, though, and I love that you brought them up. So I'll go ahead and, just because of who the Dutch are, I'll throw them as my dark horse now.
There you go.
They always find a way to play at a high level on the biggest stage because no matter who is on their team, whether it's stars or not, I'm not sure there's a better federation out there when it comes to playing as a whole.
Completely. Even going all the way back to Van Persie playing.
That's exactly,
the Dutch were amazing to watch, and the things they've been able to do, even in, if I remember right, in the last World Cup, they did pretty well for themselves. And they were honestly one of the teams that I had picked to be the dark horse. So for you to say that, I'm honestly on par with that too. Just because I know what they're capable of as a club. And I always love seeing what they put on for the pitch.
And them as a whole have always been my reasoning for why America has no excuses for not being a top 5 federation in the world.
Yep.
You're looking at the population pool that the Netherlands can pick from, and you're looking at the population pool that the Americans can pick from, and it's not even close. Not even comparable. America talent pool is crazy huge compared to the Dutch. So again, that's why I go back to the federation as a whole, from the top down, having their heads up their asses and not realizing there are ways to play this game that have been proven over time to be successful. And while you can then take your own style from that and have a style that you want to play with as a federation, that's okay. But the Americans can't pull their heads out of their asses and figure out that
How to farm
taking
talent.
the ball all the way up the field and hoping guys run after it is not going to win you games. It's not. And then they try to play possession ball, which ends up them playing 2/3 of the match in their own half. So, I mean, look, as somebody who grew up playing the game, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the intricacies of said
Getting
game.
a glass real quick. Pinky's harassing me.
No, Pinky. It's sad to watch the Americans continually struggle when the talent pool is there. So Dutch, love it. Croatia, love it. I would love to see somebody come out of nowhere. And it doesn't have to be Croatia or the Dutch. Throw Denmark in there. Throw Belgium in there. I think I saw Czech Republic, who's always kind of good but not great. Throw them in there. I want to see somebody interrupt the big dogs.
Some of the best World Cups in memory are when that happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I like England's path. It looks like from the group stage on, they could have a pretty solid path, plus their talent. I'm good with England getting there because I like some of their young talent. I think they're exciting and it would be fun to watch. But after that, I want to see somebody come out of nowhere and upset the apple cart, if you will, and make a run and see what happens.
Absolutely. No, it again goes from June 14th to right up until the Olympics.
July 14th, yep.
Yep. So 14 to 14, it's going to be great. So they're on in the afternoons and early mornings on Saturdays. So, be prepared. It's going to be awesome.
You get a chance. One of these matches happen to be on and you're sitting down. Tune in. Even if you're not a big soccer fan, this is the soccer that you want to watch. This is the highest level, the top talent, the top teams, the national teams playing against each other. It's, again, a World Cup mini.
England and Serbia play at 1:00 on Sunday, so it'll be on. I'm sure it'll be on Fox, if not somewhere else. So
who has it?
Let me check.
Which network has it? Let's look.
Fox. It's on Fox.
Fox. So Fox Sports, FX, I bet, will carry some of the games. If I had to guess, they usually will do that in big tournaments and things of that nature. So you'll have an opportunity to watch these games if you truly want to. And it doesn't matter what country you're watching. Again, this is soccer at its highest level. So no matter who's playing, if you get an opportunity, it will be worth watching because you're going to see some of the best talent.
And one thing that we always, I don't want to say preach to, but encourage on our show is to spend time with your loved ones and things. At this point, if you're going to want to watch a game, a great Irish pub is an awesome place to catch some good soccer.
My man's right.
There's always some form of a country that's represented there pretty heavily. And I know one here locally where they have different viewings for premieres and Premier Leagues and things like that. So I know they're going to be doing a bunch for the Euros. So Caleb, Abby's Irish pub. So
that's right up the street from me.
Yeah, I know. So yeah. We definitely should maybe think about going.
We can try to arrange something. I might be able to work something in for that. Really, any bar that's going to show these games, I would highly recommend just showing up to, and you will get an understanding of what this kind of fandom is on a world stage. So that's a great suggestion, Robert. Great suggestion.
So I highly recommend it. But yeah, so Euros, I'm excited. So excited.
Agreed.
Are there any other sports topics we want to cover before
There's one.
Okay.
There's one. Now, it's a little early, so this is like a preemptive strike, if you will. because Robert and I keep talking about it, and Pinky poo-poos it all the time. So we're going to make sure, we're going to make sure we get it in here a little bit. Olympics starts in a month, okay? Well, a little over a month, about a month and a half. 11 days from now, the U.S. Olympic trials start, which is a 2-week run, roughly, of all the events, and it is the final opportunity for everybody to get their spots for their specific event or sport. So those are going to be going on in starting in 11 days, and then they will continue for the next couple of weeks. Then you'll get a slight break, and then the Olympics kick off. So to start getting your fix, just like we said with the Euros, those Olympic trials come on, highly recommend just sitting down and giving it a quick watch. Spend, an hour watching a couple events here and there, because it's going to give you an idea and a feel for what's coming up in the Olympics and, kind of where the Americans stack up on the world stage in these events and things of that nature. So highly recommend checking that out. Certain sports won't be in it. I mean, your team events have already been solidified, things like basketball and whatnot. This is more for your individual, your track and field, your swimming, your diving, water sports, kayaking, things of that nature. More
running, sprinting.
Yeah. More of those individual events of what these qualifications are for. But it sets up the stage for then the Olympics and what we're going to be watching from Team USA. So while the Olympics are still a ways off and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole on that just yet,
it's coming.
It will be coming, and the Olympic trials are starting here soon. So, yes, we are going into the quote-unquote dark age of sports, where every year all you're ending up with is baseball. And if you're like us and you're not huge baseball guys, we
look to the international.
It's a tough spot, right? Tough spot for some of us sports fans, and a little bit of a dead air period. But this year is one of those every 4 years where we get something to fill those voids. So Pinky may not be excited, but the other two guys on this are.
Gonna be awesome. Cheers, man. It's gonna be great. I can't wait to talk about it with you, because the Olympics is one of my favorite things to watch growing up as a kid.
I love it.
Especially with for the viewers that don't know, in Colorado Springs, it's Olympic City. We have the Olympic Training Center here, so you see a lot of athletes come and go. Pinky, we miss you. Hey, this one's for you, buddy. I got one for you, like I said.
Pinky sex, we're talking about sports that he doesn't give a shit about.
True. So it's always exciting. And hearing some of the stories, them training in altitude when they do their interviews and things like that, it's very personable, because it's something that I look at my backyard and see.
Olympic City, USA. That's what Colorado Springs is nicknamed. So there's a reason they train in the altitude, right?
Yep. So I love it. So definitely looking forward to speaking more on that coming up.
Love it. Now, I have one last sports thing that I'll mention in passing. So before I do that, do you have any other sports topics you want to cover this evening, Robert?
I'm good.
All right. Shohei Ohtani has been cleared by Major League Baseball of any wrongdoing in the betting fiasco from his interpreter. So anyone that was hoping Ohtani was going to get slapped across the face with a lifetime ban and we wouldn't be able to talk about him as the greatest baseball player of all time, tough luck.
But other people did.
Yeah, a lot of other people went down, not Ohtani. So the greatest baseball player of all time is alive and well. We'll see how he continues to perform over the course of his career, but we all know how I feel about what he's doing on the diamond.
Yeah. Awesome.
Now, ladies and gentlemen,
nerds,
if you had more sports conversation to discuss or wanted to hear from us, you should have been commenting, because we're moving forward now. We got some nerd conversation, some geek out time. And yes. I'm gonna let Robert lead the way on this, and we're just going to rapid fire our thoughts and discussion on these things.
So I've been personally waiting for this, because I know from the very beginning when we first started talking about it, you and I were eye to eye on Dune. I know you never read the books, but you were very excited for where this went, we had to get Pinky there, and he really enjoys it now, so it's awesome. What are your thoughts now that you've seen it and been able to digest it for the last few days?
So my first gut reaction with the second movie was I liked it, but I don't know why exactly. I mean, I know why, but I don't have an exact reason overall. I feel like while I really liked the movie, I feel like it left me wanting in a lot of ways because it felt like almost the story got put on fast forward. And unbeknownst to me, after talking with Robert a little bit and getting some more detail on the books, the source material, come to find out it was kind of fast forwarded a little bit. And I understand why, but my thing is the reason for which it was done makes sense, but I feel like it took away from some of the development of the character to the point of caring more about what was going on as an audience. And I don't feel like, as a whole, Dennis Villanueva did a great job of making you understand the time period and what was happening when they were truly in the desert battling the Harkonnen and basically trying to take back over the planet. I don't feel like that part of the story was told in the best manner possible to give you a true feeling of the timeline and the expansiveness of how long that took and what was actually going on. Is that a fair feeling?
No, that's a very fair statement because and there's a lot more that plays into this on the outside than what you really see from the movie. And one big, and you, from a Lord of the Rings aspect, you'll appreciate this: Bombadil. The absence of Bombadil left a tarnish on that.
For the diehards, absolutely.
Same. There's another character who, and it kills me. So Margot Fenring, Leia Sedow's Bene Gesserit character, her ward is, who was actually supposed to be in the movie, was Timothy Blake Nelson. Who
now is this Paul's mom you're talking about? I want to make sure I'm on.
No. So
you're talking about the head. But...
No. So the one that seduced Fade.
Okay, husband, yes. Basically, the Harkonnens, Bene Gesserit. Okay, so following.
Her husband plays a lot of the strings. In the background. There's a lot of omitted things to where.
Hang on, wait. Her husband, but she was trying to get a baby from the Harkonnen. So in the book, she's married, but still doing the deeds behind. Oh, okay. Whoa.
So, that's where the books, or I should say the movies, don't really capture it, is because you see one religion, you don't get all of it. So, and one thing that I will defend Villanueva on is that he very clearly made a point in the beginning of making this, that this was a Bene Gesserit story. So I can understand the adaptation points he's making, but at some of the liberties.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Pause.
No, go ahead.
Help somebody who hasn't read the book and who really is trying to, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't care about this, turn us off now. I apologize. I'm going very selfish here and I'm trying to learn. So hopefully you want to learn with me. For anyone that hasn't read the books and just really enjoys the movies and wants to know more about the world and the universe. The book, so if this is Dennis Villanueva's kind of interpretation and he's taking it more from the Bene Gesserit perspective, where does the book come from then?
So the book itself, like you and I were talking about this in the group chat, kind of framing the story. It's told from a third person perspective, so you're getting a lot of these other conversations happening on the outside when all of what we're seeing in the movie is transpiring. So there's a lot of scheming and things going on in the background.
So you're
And
getting more from the other house's perspective. Is that what I'm understanding?
to
Kind
a
of their
point,
thought?
yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you get more of a grasp of the spice control, which leading to the original point with the timeline, when it's condensed into a pregnancy term, when this is the most valuable thing in the universe and it's constricted over years, that's lost in translation because this is vital.
So maybe that's
the
where I feel
Imperium.
like there's something missing, and that would make sense because, and maybe this is similar to Star Wars. As I'm kind of thinking about this out loud in real time, if you really think about the first original 3 Star Wars movies, there's this whole universe and stuff going along at the same time outside of just, the Death Star being blown up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that kind of what I'm made to believe here, what's going on with Dune right now? And I know Villanueva, and I don't see why this won't happen based on the way the first 2 movies have gone. He planned this to be a 5-movie sequence. Am I correct?
3.
3? I thought he had 5.
So in the books, I believe there's 6 Frank Herbert novels, and I believe there's more where his son adapts more.
Okay.
I haven't got to those yet because as a purist, I'm hesitant because I know his son took some liberties and a lot of people aren't fans. But with the next movie, if he splits it up, that would be interesting. But with Dune Messiah, it really completes Paul's journey. But when you start getting into the next book that comes after that, it gets really weird from a sci-fi point and an adaptability point. And he said if he doesn't plan to go past Messiah, which is the second book. So if there's more that comes, I'll be shocked, but it won't be from him.
You're right. Yep, I'm reading it now. So that being said, I don't know where I got 5. I feel like I read that somewhere, but either way, I'm wrong. Cool. But with that being said, how realistic is it to think that the way he set this up and the way it's being done is then going to be an opportunity to go into that whole universe and expand it even more, similar to what Star Wars has done? And while I know there's a lot of people who don't like what Disney's done, I can't get enough of it because it continues to fill out and explain and expand everything within this universe that's going on, even outside of the Jedi.
Well, my good sir, I have good news for you. If you have not seen it, here coming this fall, there is a show on Max coming called Dune Prophecy. Yes. It is set 10,000 years before Paul and how they are going to instill the prophecy of
so this is like going
almost
High Republic Star Wars style kind of
This
idea.
is the formation of how the Bene Gesserit come to rule over all.
And we're going series on HBO? Yes.
So
cheers, my guy. I'm in.
I'm very, very excited. So after this, if you go and pop on search Dune on Max, you'll see it come up as an option. You can watch the trailer and it's like 2.5 minutes.
How have I not seen this already? Okay, I'm in.
So, but it's there. It's there.
I don't know how I missed that. Okay. Now continuing back on with the Dune. The other thing I felt like you get a feeling of, but I feel like wasn't quite as impactful as it could have been. And I'm having a hard time putting my finger on why. So bear with me. I've only seen it once. I'll go back and rewatch, and I'll have to try to get a more specific reason for myself. But I feel like the relationship between, and I'm still really bad with all these names, so bear with me. Chani?
Yes.
Chani. I'm still trying to figure out why I don't fully believe in Chani and Paul's relationship. Because to me, that feels like it's a relationship that cannot be broken. And they'll have their ups and downs, but in the end, that's the most powerful relationship in the story. And I feel like that's what it is, but I don't feel like that's the feeling that I got walking away from it yet.
So, and that's my, outside of the timeline, which I will sacrifice for what they had to do to make that happen. We'll come back to that. But the biggest problem for me was the character assassination of Chani.
Ooh, character assassination.
Because it for and I forget the exact line. And I'm gonna look it up. Where they basically Chani is I don't want to say a concubine, but similar to what Jessica was to the Duke. And it was an unspoken, compassionate, never-ending love. I'm always here for you, and duty has to happen.
So I can understand how she gets there by the end of the movie and going forward, how that becomes her. But was that in the books? Is it written that she kind of always has that understanding?
Yes. I spoiler alert for the books, because I can't really tell this without how the timeline really gets broken.
If you haven't read the books yet, you're on the same page as me. You should have already done it. We're going to play catch up.
So from, again, when the first movie ends to when we get to part 2 in the movies, technically 2 years goes by. Paul obtains Jamas's family per the Fremen line of culture and understands what it is to raise a family on his own, which then leads to him.
Hold up. In the books, he basically becomes the pseudo father for the family,
the guy
of the
he
person
killed.
Yes. Ooh, okay, because you don't get any of that in the movie.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so this starts building up to where Paul starts to build that affinity for the Fremen and becomes their champion and starts falling in love with Chani and becoming aware of the prophecy. They actually conceive a child that gets murdered by Robin in the raids.
What?
So you lose a child in 2 years. They have a baby killed. That just completely out of the movies.
Oh.
Which leads to where we go into Messiah, which is a whole other thing. And there's one brief moment where you hear about it. And so on your second watch, Caleb, be looking for this. Is when Paul is promoted to the Fedaykin and gets his Fremen names, and he has the conversation with Chani about, what's your Fremen name, and it's Sahaya. Well, in the books, it is from Desert Spring Tears, the Lisan al Gaib will arise, or it's something to that effect.
Right. I caught on to that, and then Tear, Water of Life, revives him.
And in the movie, she's like, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
Whereas in the books, it is, I understand I have to do this. I'm a part of this. And
so in the books, you're telling me she is more, and granted, that could very much be because of the timeline, because in the movie, you're looking at, it's got to be less than 9 months because his mother still hasn't given birth.
Exactly.
Whereas in the books, you're talking about 2 years. So that's a whole different level of assimilation, of getting to know one another, of building a relationship, of going through different scenarios with each other. That would completely change. Wow, I see why you call it an assassination now on Chani, because you're taking, based on what you're telling me now, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm understanding is you're taking someone who went from highly against the prophecy and not believing in old religion, if you will, and believing in we do for ourselves, to seeing the acts, being part of the acts, to then becoming a believer. Is that what I'm hearing in the book she does? Because
Correct.
In the movie, based on what I'm seeing, even after she gives the tear, she still doesn't want to believe.
Let me put it this way. In the books, to the point where Jessica becomes the mother, Chani gives her the water of life.
And that does, yes, okay.
And so part of this too is when all of this is happening again, when their baby is killed in this, he is plotting and trying to figure out how to do this and strategizing. He says, I'm going to have to marry Princess Erlon. And he assures Chani that, again, this is all political. This is not who I'm going to be with. And then Jessica later on has a conversation with Chani that they have both been the Atreides concubines, but in history, they will come to remember them as wives as they have carried the heirs throughout time.
So that's where you get that line in the movie. So do you feel like then, because that line in the movie is still included, there is still a path to redeem Chani's character in the next movie? Or do you feel like she's always going to be,
They have to.
for lack of a better way of explaining it, a second-rate character within the story?
They have to. Because the Messiah can't happen without them making up. So it just, and you get a very brief moment of that, like she'll come to understand, okay, sure, but that's a total 180 from where the character actually ends up.
And I will be honest, like I said, I felt like there was something that just missing for me. So this all makes a lot more sense now. But I will say the way the movie ended, with everybody kneeling to him and her standing, staring him down and basically saying, I understand, but I hate all of it, and then turning her back and walking out, I actually loved that. That I really liked. But it didn't seem to add up with the rest of the arc for some reason.
And that's where you have to make that sacrifice where there's some resistance still. So that's that, I guess, that voice of reason you're looking for, because Paul still in this sense is, no matter what, the villain and is going to cause pain.
Even though he's trying to give everybody what they want, in order to do such, though, the ones closest to him are going to pay the highest cost kind of thing.
Exactly.
Now, I want you to touch on something for the audience, for anybody that's like me and doesn't know the books, just knows the movie. You gave me a piece of information that shined a lot of light and helped me kind of close a lot of the gaps I was feeling with Paul's sister and the timeline. And I think the way you explained it for me really helped me kind of understand why Villanueva had to make some of the choices he made. And might be speaking out of turn here, so correct me again. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's why, even though you call it a character assassination on Chani, you are okay with and understand why he had to do it the way he did.
Yes. So, and for those, and it's not clearly expressed and or stated to what I can recall, but Anya Taylor-Joy plays Aaliyah, who becomes Paul's sister and is a very key component to the next books. She, in the books, when you meet her, she's in the womb, and when Jessica's given the water of life, becomes prescient, and you have that, oh, she's pregnant. Well, that water of life transfers to Aaliyah. So she has full consciousness within the womb. So when she's born and grows up, is having all of these conversations and is using the voice, and ultimately is the one who kills the Baron instead of Paul. Well, if you were to apply that to a Hollywood perspective, with a 2-year-old being prescient with the highest IQ possible, you lose something from a dramatic standpoint, and now it just becomes a joke, which is one of the biggest problems you have with the 84 Dune, which, again, I still love that because that was the Dune I had until recent. But it's still one of those things like, yeah, all right, this is a little weird.
Right. I think that's a great thing to understand as well. I mean, trying to get a 2-year-old to act and play the most intelligent person in the room, I don't know how you would pull that off. So it makes sense that he changed the timeline a little bit to do the things he did. With that being said, though, and help me with the names, the terminology, his sister, does she, I don't know if I'm understanding this right, is she what becomes basically the ultimate, most powerful Bene Gesserit, and Paul is the most powerful entity, and so she's kind of like right behind him in like the pecking order of the universe, or what are those two names? Obviously, what is Paul called again? What's his Messiah, the Savior name, and then what is his sister's title, if you will, and what does that mean? Help me understand that a little more.
So Aaliyah, so Jessica still is the Reverend Mother, for all intents and purposes for a good while. So she, hers, and I'm trying to be careful here, just because I don't know what they're going to do with Messiah, but
Sure.
It gets to the point where Aaliyah actually becomes possessed and is being used as a weapon in different ways, against Paul and some other key people. And one of the big things that I guess happens with this is so, and I guess major spoiler, I don't know if they're going to do, and they should do this if Denny does it right, is Jason Momoa's character isn't really gone.
All right, let's save the spoilers. Do this without spoilers. I'm
Okay.
either reading the books or I'm going to wait till next movie, but I want to be a little bit surprised still. So talk to me without trying to do any more spoilers. I kind of figured Duncan was still alive somehow, based on the fact that everything went down in the first one. But what I'm really trying to get at is the mother Bene Gesserit, like the head Bene Gesserit, looks like she's no longer going to be that because Paul's mom is taking that position over, basically, is what it is my feeling. But she called his sister something, and I can't remember. They gave her a title or a name as well, I thought.
I don't think they did. I don't.
Was that just another name for what is Paul
Lisan al-Gaib?
Lisa al-Gaib. I thought they were giving another name to his sister. I thought they were calling her something else.
Not that I'm aware of.
There's another name that was thrown around towards the end of that movie.
Kwisatz Haderach?
Yes.
That's Paul. That's another.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought they were referring that to his sister as another entity, if you will. So
no, it's all the same. Basically, the Kwisatz Haderach is the pointing of the way. It's their Messiah. That's
like the Bene Gesserit's name for him, whereas the Furman, their name is the
Lisan al-Gaib.
Okay. Thank you. That helps clear up a little bit for me.
So without spoilers, like you said, there are some who will withstand Paul's ascension, as we already heard. That plays a heavy part in what happens going forward.
Well, and the idea that you're throwing
more.
I mean, just the way the movie ends, I think is I don't know if it's being given as much conversation as it should, at least from my perspective, because you've got the entire world of Dune and the people of Dune, the Furman, basically at the point now where they all believe Paul is who Paul is, and they're willing to do something that, for lack of a better way of saying it, they never would have done, which is go off planet to fight. And the way the movie ends, they're all loading up onto ships to go destroy the other houses and show them who's boss, which to me is mind-blowing.
And to get to further that point, so when the Dune originally came out, and you can find a lot of interviews and articles about it, initially Paul was perceived as a hero. And Frank Herbert was like, no, that was not my intention. And then Messiah came out, and it goes further into that, to the point where I forget the characters in the room, but they're sitting there kind of like in a Game of Thrones, like, oh, hey, this is my knowledge type situation. And they start going through the mass murderers of Earth, Genghis Khan, to the point where they even get to Hitler. and have Paul comparing himself to Hitler. And it's dark, and you get to places that you're like, I don't know, I didn't think I was going to be here.
All right, I like that.
So, again, like I said, without spoilers, there's a lot of other things that are going to work where Chani has to be redeemed in some way because Messiah can't happen without it.
Okay, I like it. Plenty more to discuss. I know Robert and I will be talking plenty more off camera to educate myself, and I haven't read a book at least a new book. Man, we got to be going on.
And Dune has an index. It has an index for definitions.
I'm good with all that. I'm a Lord of the Rings man, so you know.
So I know. I'm like, I'm preparing you because you're going to be like, oh wait, what does this mean? Where am I at?
The last book I read was what was the exact name of the book? The Book of Basketball or something like that by Bill Simmons, and it's basically his interpretation, and he creates his own pyramid to rank the best players in the history of the game. And it is my personal opinion, it's a great read. He is a huge Boston Celtic man. He is a huge homer, and he does not try to hide that or deny it. So it does lean a little heavily into the Celtics. But overall, I think it is a phenomenal read. I think he does a great job explaining his pyramid, how he gets there, how he ranks everybody. But that's the last book I read. And so I'm a big reader. I'm not a big book reader. And Dune is the first one in, God dang, I don't even know, since Lord of the Rings in middle school. Like, it's the first one that's really caught my attention to the point where I'm literally thinking about starting to actually read a novel.
And I know I sent you the screenshot of the first page. If it really helps, literally when you're reading this, it's verbatim part 1. Like, it's not missed. It is page by page.
I love that.
Well done.
I'm thinking. I'm not committing to it yet, but I am thinking.
Again, I picked it up when it came out because I'm like, this book is just too good.
How new is this book? Because I know the first movie came out in the 80s.
So, and this is a perfect transition to where we're gonna go here in a second. So if you really want to pick this apart, Caleb, this came out in the 1960s.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
To the point where, and I believe I've mentioned this on the cast before. Without Dune, Star Wars would never exist. I don't care what George Lucas says. There are too many parallels. I'm sorry. I know I'm not the only one. It is too similar. There are so many things that just, damn it. Like, I love Star Wars.
Spice exists in Star Wars, so,
and it's used for the same thing. It is used for the same thing.
Yeah. Transportation. So yeah, I even though I don't know the Dune world like you do, that alone, just that knowledge alone tells me there's probably some influence there, Mr. Lucas.
Yeah, so so for those that are on Reddit and whatever, there's all those question polls and things. So this one, and I'll send it to you, Caleb, is Dune just a cheap ripoff of Star Wars? This is the response. No, Dune is a very expensive ripoff of Star Wars. The actual ripoff was cheap. Frank Herbert watched Star Wars opening night in 1977, cribbled a bunch of notes, changed the name of the planet Tatooine to Arrakis, changed the name of Luke to Paul Atreides, and pretty much left everything else the same. The expensive part, though, was building a time machine so he could go back in time to publish Dune in 1965, 12 years before Star Wars comes out.
Oh, that's hilarious that somebody wrote it that way. Yeah, He did. He ripped off George Lucas and Star Wars, but then he built a time machine and then wrote
went
it 12
back.
years before. Yeah. Okay, cool. Gotcha.
So if that doesn't further that point,
Yeah.
I don't know what will.
I like that. I like that. Now, transitioning, like you just said, perfectly into Star Wars. What is happening tomorrow? Something's coming out
tonight, and I'm waiting. So after this evening, this podcast, I'm jumping right into my living room and watching The Acolyte. 2 episodes are out. 43 minutes for the first episode, 36 for the second episode. I'm excited. So for those that are not keeping up with Star Wars timelines and things, for the diehards, my staple, Darth Maul here. This takes place 100 years before Darth Maul. So this is pre-Sidious, even pre I'm blanking on the name. Darth Plagueis. So we are in a very unique Star Wars timeline, something that's never been touched outside of novels and comics. So it's a very big deal. Critically, it's been received very, very well. And this is all about the Sith, which, as Caleb mentioned very early on, being the dark side supporter, the Sith and the German supporter, this is where I live.
The fact that those two are set together is
terrible.
I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not even going to mention it.
Nope. Moving on. So I, as a Sith person, I'm excited. I wore the shirt this is my favorite Sith. I'm about actually in Clone Wars, where Darth Maul comes back with my wife. So she's excited to see that.
Spider Darth Maul, is that where you're at?
Yep, we're about there. So his brother's about to get the orders.
Crazy spider. Yeah, that's fun.
So it says always remember, the bottom half says that you're nothing without your better half. So it's a good pun. And I feel like it's very well justified for not just the movies but characters overall. And for those that are not into Star Wars but are prefer the faces of actors and things like that, Trinity is finally making her appearance in the Star Wars universe from The Matrix, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know how I feel about that still.
Oh, I'm so excited. So excited. She's just a badass and deserves to be in Star Wars anyway.
I just feel like you're always going to see Trinity.
No.
It's going to be really hard for me to not see Trinity.
I don't know if you're a horror movie person, that image shattered for me when I watched the movie Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, I don't do the horror stuff. It's too.
Her is Trinity. That's changed me.
Horror films, the scary movie stuff is too. What's the word I'm looking for? Predictable.
Too real. Oh,
it's
fair enough.
Too predictable. There is a very set and strict rule book that you have to follow. It feels like. And even people that deviate from it end up at the same point at some point or another. I sit there and I watch them and I go, well, that was fucking stupid. The door was open. You could have just walked away and called some people to help you. And instead, you decided to go do it by yourself. That's not realistic.
You're not
That would never happen.
Not wrong.
I can't get behind this. And when I can call out what's happening next, it does nothing for me as far as interest. So I don't watch them.
Totally respect that. And on a off tangent real quick with that, supposedly one of quote unquote greatest movies of the year from some critics is this horror movie that's from the killer's perspective. So I'm going to be checking that out. I'm curious to see how that is. But anyway, going back to the Star Wars thing there, I get it from the perspective with always seeing Trinity. Just like how I'm having a hard time with the Korean actor from Squid Games being in this.
Yeah, I didn't watch that, so I'm okay.
But I'm also excited for a lot of the other actresses in it too, or actors and actresses in it too.
It's like I love Jackson as Mace Windu, and he did really, because he's such a good actor, he did well about kind of making you forget who he is. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't always think that I'm one bad mamma jamma bad guy away from getting a motherfucker. It's Jackson. It's coming.
It's
That this
there.
is what it is. So it was hard to not always kind of have that in the back of your mind. Trinity's character was so one-dimensional on purpose, and she did it so well. And when I say one-dimensional, I mean the lack of emotion that she always showed because of what that character had gone through her whole life. Even when she showed emotion, it was still flat. And that was on purpose, right? And she played that very well.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be really hard for me to then see her do something that shows a well-rounded human being, if you will. I think that's where I struggle with that. So casting her in a prominent role, I think, is the issue. You can take famous actors and put them in the Star Wars universe, a la Burr, great comedian. Everybody's like, he's going to be in that. How is he going to be in
He
Star
played
Wars?
one of the greatest
But
characters.
dude, what he did was incredible, right? That's a one-off, though, in my opinion. From my perspective throughout history, those are one-offs. When you can get somebody who's that famous and then you forget they're famous for another reason and they kill the role. Can she do it? Yes. But I'm still on the side of erring on I wish they would have picked somebody else kind of thing.
I could see that.
I think the other issue I have here is, I'm a huge Star Wars guy. And I know the ins and outs of the Skywalker era. I didn't read the books. I didn't play the video games because I had so many other interests that took away from my time that I don't know a whole lot about anything before the Skywalker saga.
Pause.
Okay.
Pause. I'm going to just completely come out and say this. You are totally fine.
I know that.
This is all recent. This is all recent.
I know all of that. I'm just saying that to get to this idea.
Okay.
When you talk about the High Republic, and granted that's what, like 10,000 years before the Skywalker saga?
Well, some of the stories, this specific story is 100 years.
Well, I know that. I'm talking about the High Republic. As a whole, the High Republic was like 10,000 years before the Skywalker saga, right? Like way, way before.
Mm-hmm.
And so the kind of putting this into perspective of where I'm going with this, the technology and stuff that you end up seeing in the Skywalker saga had been around for millennia within the Star Wars universe. So going only 100 years before the Skywalker saga intrigues me a lot because I know nothing of it. And I know where the focus of this is going to be, which I love because it's not focusing on anything from the Skywalker saga per se.
They have said there are supposed to be no
characters. I've heard that.
Thank God.
Where I have a hard time with this, and I know it'll change once I see it, but we're only 100 years. So Yoda is full-fledged running the Jedi mode at this point. Like, I would have a hard time believing an 800-year-old Yoda is not on the Jedi Council as a master. So we're going to do all of this story, but we're not going to talk about or include what I believe would be one of the most prominent characters in the universe at that time from the Jedi side. And there's some other characters too that should overlap in this. Robert said Darth Plagueis. Are we sure he's not around? I mean, we're only talking 100 years before the Skywalker saga. And as we look at, Darth Sidious, he's let's call him a 60-year-old man when this starts. 50-year-old man when this starts. So, and we don't know his real age, just based on appearance is what I'm gauging this on. He could be 200 years old for all we know. But I believe Darth Plagueis would be alive and well if we're only talking 100 years before the Skywalker saga. So I am very interested to see how they tell this story and entrench us within the universe again in a time period where I believe there should be other main characters at the top kind of being the puppet masters, if you will, controlling where this is moving forward. So I am very intrigued to see how this story unfolds and is told.
Completely. And where they're coming from with the Plagueis side of things, it's gonna be one of those situations where it's just a matter of when, because we haven't met him yet.
Right. And who's the Sith Lord that we've been seeing? Is this Plagueis's first attempt at an apprentice? Is this Sidious's Darth Maul? What are we looking at here? And that's what intrigues me so much is, like you said, timeline-wise, is he there? Is he isn't there? I would tend to believe, based on everything we know already, he's fully there. And not only is he fully there, Sidious is his right hand. That's the feeling I would get. So how are we going to tell this story of the Sith without talking about what I believe would be the Sith Lord at the time?
And now we're getting really into the timeline here. So that way you have an understanding of where this lines up. So when we get to meet Palpatine for the first time, he's 52.
Right. And how did he end up as a senator on Naboo? I mean, he says that's his home planet, right? He's from there. That's how he became a senator. So then where does that backstory roll into, and how does that all play into where we're about to go? Because when you really think about 100 years, yeah, it's a long time and a lot can happen. But in the grand scheme of things, in the overall story arc that we've already been told, it falls well within that range.
Exactly. And if memory serves me right from when I was researching this, when Plagueis and Palpatine meet, Palpatine is like 19. So it is very interesting with how this storyline will play out. Because there's so many things that can happen. And
absolutely.
I'm very excited for the
just based on what you just said. I mean, literally, Plagueis could come immediately after the story we're about to see, and could have been kind of waiting in the wings, similar to what Palpatine Darth Sidious did, to then all of a sudden jump in and take power. So there's just all these little trinkets that you kind of have floating out there that you kind of already know. But this is a brand new story that this director is taking full advantage of the opportunity to tell something brand new outside of what we already know. Yep. So do they hold true and fast to that? Or do they give you the little trinkets to kind of tie everything back in going forward to what we know now? Because like I said, this isn't the High Republic. This isn't 10,000 years before what we know. This isn't, while I don't know the story yet, and it's on my to-do list to catch up on the High Republic stuff and whatnot. But you talk about, Darth Raven and the, I'm drawing a blank.
Now we're getting into Old Republic.
I'm sorry, High Republic. I meant Old Republic going into High Republic. But you start talking about those things and how they play in and how they manipulate and shape everything that we end up knowing now. It's not that. It's not that far removed. It's not millennia. It's not generations. It's right within, you could talk about great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, kids kind of situation here, to where they could all be alive at the same time kind of thing, but their stories don't necessarily interact or intertwine. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, completely. Again, this is uncharted territory. Very excited. The theories are running rampant. I have done it just came out for the public 2.5 hours ago. So I'm waiting. I've avoided everything that I can. With some of we've talked about it, the trailers that come out, I watch one and then I'm done. So I've avoided all the presses. I've avoided everything that I can because I want this to be special.
Same. And I will be watching it tomorrow night after the kids go to bed because the wife likes Star Wars. So we've been trying to catch up on all sorts of series. Haven't gotten a chance one way or another. So we made a pact, if you will, that we're going to sit down and watch this on a weekly basis.
Cheers to that.
Try to stay up on something.
So we'll at least then, Pinky will have to catch up when it's all out, but we'll at least have something to spoiler-free talk about until everybody can binge it. So
I ain't waiting for Pinky. So if we get to the end and he's still not caught up, we're spoiling the shit out of this. My guy,
I love it.
My guy can figure it out from there. Pinky,
I love it.
I know you're listening. Pay attention, my guy.
Yeah, he's calling us nerds.
This guy who could go 1,000 times deeper on comic books than I ever could.
Oh, yeah.
Calling us nerds. Look at him.
Ugh, so good.
You go put on your John Elway jersey and sit down and watch some Hulk, and then we'll talk. Yeah, we know what you're really doing.
So, but yeah, that's what I got for Star Wars. The way that I will wrap up, and I know Caleb, you said you're not a huge fan of it, but I am quaking with anticipation for Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus.
Oh yeah, I don't.
So I know that's not your thing. The new trailer came out today. For me growing up, that was like one of my first horror movies to watch with my dad. And I just loved the sci-fi horror. It's always been one of my favorite things. And this is going back to practical effects. So it's somebody in an alien suit. They're using actual animatronics and things, and it just looks terrifying. And I am so excited.
Solid.
So
get it.
That's what I got to say.
Well, on that note, I will tell you my final thought is there is NBA Finals going on starting Thursday. There is NHL Finals going on. I believe that starts Saturday, if I'm correct. That might start Thursday as well. Thursday or Saturday. It's right in there. Robert will give us a definitive here in a moment. So we've got those two going on. We've got the Olympic trials starting here in 11 days. We have the
Saturday.
Euros. Saturday. It is Saturday. Okay. We've got the Euros starting in 10 days. Then we have the Olympics rolling off, moving into training camp and the start of the NFL season. 2024 summer is actually a good summer for sports. Not just baseball. And I like baseball.
It's better than what it is for nonsense right now.
I like baseball. I just don't watch 162 games and follow it as close as other sports. So when it becomes the only thing there, it gets a little tough at times. So I am stoked that we have other things to soak up some of that summer heat for us. On that note, Pinky, we miss you, my guy. Hope you're having a ball down there at the Alamo, living your best life. Do not take those moments for granted when you have an opportunity to spend them with your inner circle, your family, your friends, your loved ones, whoever you consider that to be. Cherish those moments. Take advantage of them when you can. We appreciate all you guys. We'll be back next week. Until then, Robert, Pinky, fans.
Cheers, boys.
We're out. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east.